morning of March 2nd, 1998, Vienna began like any other ordinary day. The city was waking up. People were preparing for work and school. That morning, 10-year-old Natascha Kamp was also getting ready to leave home for school. A small argument took place. Natascha said she was growing up and could go to school on her own. Her mother hesitated. She had rarely allowed this before. But in the end, she gave in to her daughter's request. Before leaving the house, Natascha hugged her mother. She told her that she loved her. It was an ordinary sentence, spoken every morning. But that morning, without realizing it, it was spoken for the last time. The door closed. Natascha put on her backpack and started walking toward school. She had a route of about 2 kilometers ahead of her. Familiar streets, sidewalks she knew well, and people she saw every day. After a short while, a white van parked along the road caught her attention. The man standing beside it gave Natascha a strange feeling. She realized she was afraid. Instinctively, she wanted to cross to the other side of the street. But then she stopped. She did not want to be afraid. She told herself she needed to prove that she was no longer a child. Without slowing her steps, she decided to walk past the van. In that moment, everything changed. The vehicle door suddenly opened. Before Natascha could understand what was happening, she was grabbed by a strong hand. Without having time to scream, she was dragged into the back of the van. The door slammed shut. The street fell silent again. No one saw anything. No one heard anything. The white van sped away. At that moment, Natascha did not know where she was being taken. She did not know who had kidnapped her. She only knew that she was inside a moving vehicle with a stranger. A short time later, the van stopped. They were in front of an ordinary house with a private garden. The man wrapped Natascha in a blanket and quickly took her inside. They went down a set of stairs. For Natascha, those stairs were the first steps away from the world she knew. They were now underground, inside a confined space. A heavy door closed. Darkness fell. Natascha was left alone inside. There was no window, no sound. Her connection to the outside world was completely cut off. At that moment, she did not know how long this would last. Hours? Days? Maybe someone would find her soon. At the same time, the city had sprung into action. It was noticed that Natascha had not arrived at school. A missing person report was filed quickly. Police units became involved. Witnesses began to speak. There were mentions of a white van. Hundreds of similar vehicles in the city were checked. Houses were searched. Questions were asked. There was hope, because everyone believed that a small girl would be found quickly. During these searches, no one looked beneath an ordinary-looking house. No one imagined that beneath a quiet street, a child was being held meters below the ground. From the outside, the house appeared to hide nothing. It had a garden. Its door was locked. Everything looked normal. But underground, Natascha waited in the dark. That day, it was not only a little girl who disappeared. Time disappeared with her. Life underground could not be measured in hours or days. For Natascha, time had turned into a dark void. The cell was small. The concrete walls were cold. There was no window, no daylight. No sound from the outside world. Only her own breathing, and from time to time, distant footsteps. In the first days, she wanted to believe this was a misunderstanding. Someone was looking for her. The police would come. The door would open. But as the hours passed, those thoughts began to fade. The man came down to the cell at regular intervals. He brought food, gave brief instructions, and then went back upstairs. His words were short and cold. Slowly, Natascha began to realize that her presence there was part of a plan. This space had not been built in haste. It had been prepared in advance. The door was heavy. It was soundproof. It had been designed with escape in mind. The difference between day and night disappeared. The light turning on and off became the only marker of time. Long stretches of silence followed. Silence became heavier than fear. There was no one to talk to. Her thoughts echoed inside her head. To avoid losing her mind, Natascha counted numbers to herself, hummed songs, and repeatedly replayed everything she could remember. Above ground, the searches gradually slowed. The panic of the first days gave way to uncertainty. Weeks passed, months passed. Hope slowly faded. People began to believe that the little girl would never be found. This was a reality that the child waiting underground did not know, but somehow felt. As time went on, small changes were made to the cell. The lighting was adjusted, ventilation was added. These were not done for Natascha's comfort, but to allow the captivity to last longer. The cell was no longer a temporary place. It had become a permanent living space. She was forced to accept this reality. As the years passed, Natascha changed. Childhood slipped away. She grew up within the walls of the cell, but during this time, she did not only wait, she began to learn how to survive. She observed the moods of the man she faced. She learned when to speak and when to remain silent. She understood that small mistakes could have serious consequences. After some time, she was allowed out of the cell. At first, only for very brief moments. She was asked to help with household tasks. But every time she left the cell, new rules followed. Curtains were closed, doors were locked, approaching windows was forbidden. This was not freedom. It was simply a more complex form of captivity. For Natascha, the outside world now represented both hope and danger. She thought about escaping, but each time she gave up. One wrong move could bring everything to an end. Survival required patience, and patience became her strongest weapon. As the years went by, the relationship between them took on a disturbing shape, a bond made of fear, control, and silence. Natascha suppressed her emotions in order to survive. She hid her anger. She noticed the weaknesses of the man in front of her. This was a struggle for power, and in that struggle, there was no room for mistakes. Outside, life continued to move forward. Seasons changed, people grew older, cities transformed. But underground, time felt as if it had stopped. For Natascha, the years felt like one long day. Still, a small thought remained inside her. One day, one moment, one mistake. This system could not last forever. And that moment was approaching in an unexpected way. The system that had lasted for years was not shaken by a dramatic event, but by a small moment of carelessness. That day did not begin differently from the others. Natascha was once again doing household chores. The curtains were closed, the doors were locked. Everything seemed the same as always. But within this ordinary routine, there was one detail that had gone unnoticed for a long time. The garden gate was not locked. At first, Natascha did not realize it. She hesitated. It could have been a trap. What had kept her alive for years was her ability to not act impulsively. But as time passed, the voice inside her became clearer. This was an opportunity, perhaps the only opportunity. Without allowing herself another moment of doubt, she stopped what she was doing and walked toward the garden gate. She pushed it. It opened. The moment she stepped onto the street, her heart felt as if it would burst from her chest. She started running. She ran without looking back, without slowing down. What she had dreamed of for years became real within seconds. She took refuge in a nearby house. She knocked on the door. She told the elderly woman inside who she was and that she needed help. Her sentences trembled, but their meaning was clear. The police were called. Police units arrived at the scene shortly afterward. At first, Natascha's story was difficult to believe. Everyone thought she had died years earlier, but the truth emerged with its full weight. When officers entered the house, the basement door was opened. They went downstairs. What they saw confirmed everything that had been described. Narrow spaces, heavy doors, soundproof walls, a place where time had frozen. In that moment, it was not only a kidnapping case that was solved. A reality that had been ignored for years was brought to light. The case echoed across the country. People began asking the same question. How was this possible? How had no one noticed? Neighbors, authorities, society itself? Everyone looked back. Beneath an ordinary house on a quiet street, an entirely different life had existed. The perpetrator ended his own life shortly afterward. This did not make the questions easier to answer. On the contrary, many things were left unresolved. Because in this story, everything did not end with the escape. For Natascha, freedom began with the opening of a door, but recovery was a much longer journey. The outside world felt foreign. It was loud. The light was overwhelming. There were too many people. For someone who had spent years in a confined space, even freedom could be frightening. The trauma had not been left behind. It had only changed its location. In time, everyone returned to their own lives. But for Natascha, time still moved differently. The past was not something that could be easily left behind, because some memories do not close when doors are shut. This story is not only a story of escape, it is also a story of silence, neglect, and places no one chooses to look. Sometimes the most horrifying truths are hidden in the most ordinary places, and sometimes, for years, no one truly looks. The door was opened, but the marks left behind did not fade easily.